Kuzuzangpo and welcome to this program. Well, if you have followed our news and also read the news about one Be Kind program from Tarayana, and to know more about this, I would like to have Dr. Ritu Varma, who is the principal researcher or the program coordinator of Be Kind here at Tarayana. That is Tarayana Center for Social Research and Development, which is the research division of Tarayana. And also I have here with me Chimidoji, who is the director of this research division of Tarayana. Welcome to this program. So if I may start with Dr. Ritu, if you can tell us what Be Kind program is all about.
So Be Kind stands for the Bhutanese Knowledge for Indigenous Development. And really it's focusing on Indigenous knowledge around a few areas. One of them is climate change adaptation. One of them is organic agriculture. Another one is holistic food systems. And the other one is gender equality and well-being. So we're looking at all these things cross-cutting one another. And you asked, why Be Kind? And the reason for this is multiple levels, actually. First of all, these areas of research that I've mentioned are kind of critical areas of research. They're impacting communities at the very grassroots. And so the project is very much rooted at the grassroots, trying to generate knowledge from people's own voices, their own experiences with climate adaptation, with organic food production, gender equality, and so on and so forth. There are some gaps in the research, so that's one of the things that we're interested in filling. Although there's a lot of research in quantitative data, there's a lot of research that's been done in using quantitative methodologies, there's a lot less so in terms of qualitative research, ethnographic methods that really try to capture the voices and the experiences of women, men, and youth in the communities. So that's one angle. It's also about transdisciplinary research. So that means, crossing, getting out of our silos, our biophysical silos, our social science silos, and really bringing teams of researchers together to try and collect data together, doing joint research, but also breaking out of the silo, whereas there is also room for citizen research. So it's also empowering local communities to carry out their own research. So that's another thing. And I think the last, a couple of things, we're looking at capacity strengthening in the project of fellow researchers, but also capacity strengthening at the community level, as well as evidence-based policy making. But lastly, I think the most important thing is the title itself, Be Kind. It comes from a place of empathy, of compassion, of being kind. And since TCSRD is the research arm of the Tarayana Foundation, the motto is service from the heart. And so I think the project really comes from that place, service from the heart, but also it's about compassionate wisdom, about generating knowledge and wisdom that has a compassionate, it comes from a compassionate place. So it's really about helping the most vulnerable women, men, and youth in the communities.
Okay, as interesting as the name of this project, Be Kind, is and what it stands for, but as we know, it's indigenous knowledge, which is important. So how relevant is this indigenous knowledge when we talk so much about digitalization, digital world, telecommunication, this ICT and all in this day and age? So how relevant is this indigenous knowledge for development?
Well, I'm an anthropologist, so my first answer is it's very important. But really, I think we can again look at indigenous knowledge from various different angles and levels. Mm-hmm. First of all, indigenous knowledge is about local communities, local women, men, and youth who are living in these remote rural communities. And on an everyday basis, they are struggling to cope with climate change, trying to find solutions around organic agriculture. We know there's all kinds of things that are happening, increased human wildlife conflicts, increased pests. But this is more recently with climate change, but over generations, they have been interacting with their environment, trying to eke out a livelihood, a survival, and they have very intimate knowledge with their environment, and this knowledge is passed down over generations. And because they live in those contexts, they have developed ways of coping, right, to conserve the environment, because the environment is really their livelihoods. This is where they derive their food, their water, the very resources that they need for survival. So Indigenous knowledge is really important because it's context specific. And it's also important because it's culturally specific. So if we can sort of zoom out of Bhutan and we look at Indigenous knowledge, what might work in, let's say, the dry lands of Northern Africa are not going to work in the lush rainforests of the Amazon or the high altitudes of the Himalayas. Not just because of the biophysical differences and the climate differences, but also because in every single area, in every single community and village, people have developed different ways of understanding their environment, of coping, and also these are very culturally specific ways. So Indigenous knowledge really values, culturally specific ways of interacting with the environment in society. On another level, Bhutan has developed over many decades this alternative development path called gross national happiness. And it's a homegrown approach to development. And it's something that grew out of a very particular context. It has Buddhist values enshrined in it. It's a very holistic approach to development, which has a fourth pillar of culture, which even the SDGs doesn't have. And so there again, Indigenous knowledge plays a very important role in having a development approach that is context specific. So why Indigenous knowledge? You asked in an era of digitalization. What we see is the youth, even adults, addicted to their mobile phones, addicted to their screens. Just the other day, I was sitting out in nature around a bonfire, and there was a young child, and this beautiful bonfire in the middle of, the mountains, the river flowing right next to it, and the child was looking at the mobile phone and unaware of what's happening in front of him. And I think, the darker side, the negative side of the digital era is that we are not connecting with nature. And that lack of connection with nature, amongst many, many other things, is why we find ourselves in the middle of a climate crisis. We need to reconnect with nature, and we need to, get on top. There's maybe a middle path. Yes, it's great to have digital technology, but nature is really suffering. So there has to be a middle path where we value both, not just overuse of one side.
When we talk about be kind this time, which area of our country or which region are we looking at, or are we focusing this time?
As all of us are aware, Tarayana has been there since 2003 with the launching by the then Crown Prince, now President K5. So we have been working for many years, and then we were too focused on development activities. We have never tried to look back at whether we are doing the right things or doing the things right. So, and in 2016, we decided to have this Tarayana Center for Social Research and Development to see whether we are doing right things or things right. Since then, we have developed a strategy to implement this. These are the But however, because of the shortage of resources, shortage of manpower, we were really stuck. Now with this Be Kind, we have that opportunity to develop ourselves more professionally, to carry out this society agenda and strategy. So this is the right moment, I think, to look at present situations where government is also focusing on developing research capacities to guide the development. So we were very fortunate, and then I think we are in the right environment. Regarding the focus area of this, as Dr. Ritu has already mentioned, climate change, empowerment, and then indigenous knowledge. So yeah, this is a huge topic that we are trying to tackle. The project sites that we have chosen are Pinaka, Wangdi, and Kasa, representing from subtropical to the alpine region, to give us a representative idea of how our populations are dealing or coping up with climate change, how these are impacting their livelihood. So we feel that we have chosen the right project size, and then we can learn a lot about it, and then it will supplement or support the foundation's rural development initiatives, interventions based on concrete evidences. So we are hopeful that we can contribute more through this Be Kind.
Okay, even with this Be Kind and also the focus that you have this time, but talking about the past projects or the activities that Tarayana has been carrying out, what have we learned on, what were some of the findings that you could also relate to this research?
Tarayana started with the support to basic necessities, that is housing. When our founder and patron, Gelyum Ashidoyum, wanted to travel throughout the country, she saw so many rural people staying in a very shabby conditions. She really wanted to improve their living standards. The mainstream interventions that we have is we initiate sort of income generating activities, so that the assumption is once they get this income, they are able to construct or build comfortable houses, which we have realized is not necessarily true. So we started with the housing project, and then if you look at our stories, it says people get so much self-esteem and they can take the next leap to higher level. Without the basic housing facilities, they are not able to imagine the next day was how they are going to survive. So we learned from that housing is a prerequisite to any intervention in the remote rural areas. Once we have the house in place, then people are willing to engage with us on every intervention. Now we are engaging in sort of health and sanitation, income generation, and they have so much confidence in us because we were able to put them at a level where they can take the next step. So housing is an entry point for us, and it has proven quite successful. Without this housing, you give sanitation, nutrition, they are not bothered. Sanitation, water, then toilet. At the end, if they have to live in a small room, crowded room, I mean, it doesn't make much sense. For them, it is not very interesting. So we felt that the housing was very important, and it still remains important. And then people might think we are constructing their houses. We do not. We provide basic support like payment for carpenters and mason. In the process, they train the community members for further maintenance. We provide some fuel for power chainsaw. What we do is actually facilitate the processes. Constructing housing is a long process. People have to get their terms verified, plots verified. You have to have approval from local government, and then you have to process timber permit. These are very difficult for them to understand. So what we do as a Tarayana, the officers are very now experienced in what is needed to start constructing a house. So we are facilitating. And one of the other things that we have seen as we kept on engaging, government comes with some regulations. For example, I think 2018 or 17, I think government said you should have a architectural drawing to approve this housing. People do not know. They will never be able to construct a house if we are not there. Our field officers, they learn and then they try to help them with such requirement. So these are what we are doing in the housing. And then one of the experiences what we have is this Buzi program. Those days we are not allowed to call ECCD. So then we had to coin appropriate terminology, Buzi program. This Buzi program is also very important for Tarayana because again our patron, the founder, went through the villages and saw these children traveling long distances to attend schools. And on top of that, the one story that is most shocking or say somehow that kickstart our engagement is with Buzi program, that a child of 5 years was tied to a windowsill with a kera belt, while mother attended to the farm work. So I think that's why then we said let's do it at any cost. And we have developed strategy how to go about in 2007, and then we went full-fledged. And I'm glad, or I'm very satisfied that the government has finally taken over as one of the initiatives to provide ECCD to all the rural communities. These are two striking sort of experiences we have dealing with the development activities in the villages.
Okay. As Chimisa is pointing out, or he has mentioned about building houses or even starting with daycare or ECCD from Buzi program to coming from there. But as we see now with all those activities intended to enhance rural economy or their life, but we have this phenomena or problem of rural-urban migration where most of our youth are coming into the urban area to start a livelihood or find better means. So in such a case, don't you think this has to be also looked upon or addressed? Do we have engagement of youth in this Be Kind program so that they have to change their mindset or look for better opportunities there itself in their villages or rural areas?
Most of our field sites are in remote rural areas. But as I said earlier, we're looking at climate change, which really knows no boundaries. People are affected in rural and urban areas. We're also looking at organic agriculture, which would be a rural kind of activity. But most importantly, I think there's the holistic food systems, and then there's gender equality and youth empowerment. So how are these things connected? Yes, organic agriculture mostly occurs in the rural areas. But if you look at the holistic food systems, there's a few questions that arise. How do you get this food to the markets in the urban centers or even export it outside of Bhutan? So you have to look at it holistically. So there's a lot of important urban-rural linkages there around marketing, distribution, which we're going to be doing research on. Then the holistic food system, there's other questions that arise. We know that in urban areas, people have started to eat a lot of packaged foods that are really low in nutrition. You know, those noodles, packaged noodles, chips, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, that this is going to have, it already is, but it's going to have long-term health impacts on people. So when we say holistic food systems, we're also concerned about the linkages, you know, that this food actually the other way comes from the urban areas or it comes from outside of Bhutan and it goes into the rural areas. And what Tarayana Foundation has noted is that even in the really remote rural areas, people are eating more of this really low nutrition food. And so, you know, when we look at organic agriculture, of course, there's a livelihood and income generating opportunity, but there's also an opportunity to try to balance out the nutrition in the rural areas. One of our field sites is, a couple of our field sites are very high altitudes, and so in the harsh winters, it's hard to grow food. And so we have to look seasonally throughout the year. How does people's nutrition, is it better in the summers, worse in the winters because they can't access fresh vegetables? So that whole holistic system has to be looked into, and it has important rural-urban linkages. If organic agriculture becomes more viable and it becomes more interesting in terms of income generation, there could be a lot of interest from the youth as well. And then, there's also a very strong gender equality angle, because whether it's in matrilineal areas or whether it's in patrilineal areas, in either case, women are often requested to remain behind in the rural areas. And so, we have to explore that as well. Are the opportunities equitable for both men and women, for both young men and young women? We have to look at, how can, what are the dynamics, and bring in the voices of the youth, and also voices of equitable voices of women and men. So we're just beginning the Be Kind project. We launched it on August 1st, just about a month ago. And we're soon going to be, like any research project, you start off with more questions than answers. You start off with lots of theories and a lot of kind of hypothesis. And so at this stage, we have lots of questions we want to answer, but it's through rigorous, systematic, transdisciplinary research that also has a strong, a capacity strengthening component, but also a strong evidence-based policy making component, that we're hoping to explore these dynamics and hopefully come up with some more answers as to what's really happening.
So for how long is this research going to be? Who all are involved? And also there was this mention of the scholarships, PhD scholarship for this research, if you can tell us.
We have 4 specific objectives. One of them is generation of knowledge, which we've talked about. Research, filling gaps in research. The other one is to inform evidence-based policy making. Now we have 2 objectives that look at capacity strengthening. One of them is at the community level, but one of them is very much focused in building the capacity of the next generation of researchers, and to build that capacity towards systematic, rigorous research. That is at a world-class quality, and we are going to be supporting 8 PhD students, 4 in the natural sciences and 4 in the social sciences, and as well as 2 master's students in the social sciences. And these 8 PhDs are going to be at Bhutanese colleges. So while this research project is taking off, at the same moment as we speak, the College of Natural Resources, and as well as the College of Language and Culture Studies, is developing and preparing to launch 2 PhD programs, one in climate studies at CNR and one in anthropology at CLCS. So this is an important moment in the history of Bhutan. For the first time, these colleges are working towards launching PhD programs in Bhutan. And so this is a momentous occasion. These 8 PhDs scholarships are for Bhutanese PhDs, for Bhutanese students to get PhDs in Bhutan at Bhutanese colleges. So that's really an incredible moment in history. And so obviously the partners are the College of Natural Resources at Lobesa and the College of Language and Culture Studies at Takse. Also IDRC, our donor, is, we work in very close collaboration with them. And then we also have a strategic partner, Out of the Box Research and Action. And TCSRD is the lead on the research project.
From our experiences or what we see, we do research, there are PhD candidates or those having this degrees, certificates. But what happens to their research? As we know, they're shelved. Nobody actually seem to care about. So what will happen to this? What is the guarantee, or what do you hope for from this research?
It's a very good question again. Sometimes people carry out research and the research remains on a dusty bookshelf, but at the same time, something can arise and all of a sudden you need that knowledge. You see it all the time when you listen to your news program or the BBC or Al Jazeera or CNN, that all of a sudden there is an issue in a certain part of the world in a very local context and an expert is called in, right? So I think to generate knowledge for itself is really important. And sometimes in this kind of very globalized capitalistic world, we always think, well, what's the economic value? But I think, in terms of long-term thinking, there's importance to generate knowledge just for the sake of generating knowledge. That itself is important. Now, having said that, to answer your question, our project is an action-oriented research project, which is why Tarayana Foundation through TCSRD is leading it. It's very much action-oriented. So that means as we're carrying out research, we're also assisting and supporting the rural communities. They're going to tell us through a needs assessment, through community consultations, what it is that they want. And so we have resources to support them to carry out these action-oriented pieces of research around organic agriculture, climate adaptation, gender equality, holistic food systems, all of these things. But at the same time, we've also put in resources for things to really make sure that the research is inclusive and equitable, which means that we've put resources aside for childcare. This means that women and men should be able to participate in the research equally. There's always the assumption that, okay, we have a community meeting, but not enough women are participating for various reasons. So if you can alleviate their practical needs with like childcare, then they can participate. We also have some money set aside to make sure that differently abled people are able to participate, and so that they can come and join the community consultations, be part of the research. And so it's one of these projects where we've, not just the scientific research, but also to enable the communities to really participate. There's also a very strong component on citizen research. Action-oriented participatory research. So for example, we're going to be giving communities smartphones, and they're going to be taking their own photographs of what they think are the issues. So, it's not just, researchers coming in doing the research, but the citizens, the community themselves. And so to go back to your initial question, if the research is action-oriented, already it's not just about producing, a book that sits on a dusty shelf. It really has an action component to it. At the same time, we have to also follow the internationally set standards of research which produce thesis. So, they have to be conceptually grounded. So I think this project, that's why it's transdisciplinary, and it has many different levels and components to it.
What do you hope for to wrap up this program, if you can tell us?
I think from this project, we are going to sort of build our capacities to do a rigorous research, so that we can conduct, carry out interventions that are realistic, as Dr. Rito was saying, bottoms up, really find out from them, build our capacities, and also whatever we do based on those research results, not something some people are saying to do. This has been our approach, and then I think this will further strengthen our confidence and conviction that bottoms up is good, but then we also have to have concrete data or information why people are asking for that one, whether we can do it or not. Definitely, if the people are asking for it, there must be a need for it. So we would like to focus on that. We will really like to find out what really people need. And so far, as I was saying earlier, housing is one thing that everybody wants. So similarly, once we have graduated from that, there will be other priority action where our interventions are required. So we hope we can identify those issues, see whether it's relevant for the is it only relevant for the research areas, or we can upscale in throughout the country. So it would be very good if these research findings are upscalable throughout the country. We would be able to benefit larger population. That's our expectation from that one.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ritu and Chimisa, for this wonderful discussion on Be Kind. I hope our audience understands what Be Kind is all about from Tarayana. And thank you for watching this program.